when I was working with the tank testers there, is a black guy that controlled the air.
Mm-hmm.
And one night he was putting air in and went to sleep. It started building up in there, and we got beating on the walls, and the guy come by and woke him up. But a little bit more, and he'd have busted our eardrums. That's another thing that got me kind of leery of working there.
So they assigned you to the Army Air Corps, and that's when you went to Florida?
I went to Miami Beach. They took over all of the hotels on the beach. And I was in the MacArthur Hotel.
Was that a nice hotel?
Nice hotel. There was 4 to each room. Pretty crowded.
Yeah.
But that's where I took my basic training at.
So what had you done at Croft? Camp Croft?
All I did there was get examination.
Oh, okay.
And
So you took your basic at Miami Beach then?
took my basic Miami Beach.
How many weeks was that then?
I think it was about 10 weeks of it. But I was down there until spring. And then I moved to Goldsboro to take engine training. And when I got to Goldsboro, they wasn't ready for us in our class. We were just laying around. And they sent a group of draftees in there that was supposed to went to a basic training place somewhere, and they got them mixed up and sent them to Goldsboro. So that's got several of us to be drill instructors, and I was one of them. And we put those guys through basic training before we ever started engine school.
In Goldsboro, was that Seymour Johnson then?
Yeah.
It was Seymour Johnson
Yeah.
then?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, down there I could come home about every weekend. We'd come up. A lot of times go to Greensboro. Some of us just come up to Greensboro and spend the weekend.
And this was in 42? Or 40?
Yeah. Yeah, the
42.
summer of 42.
And
I stayed there until I finished engine school. Then I went back to Fort Meyers. They had just started, they had built that air base and was starting a gunnery school. And we were one of the first in there. They didn't even have the barracks finished. We lived in tents until they finished the barracks. And we went through gunnery school using twin engine AT-16s and two-seated single engine AT-6s.
and what was gunnery school? What did you do?
Well, you learned all about the 50 caliber machine guns.
That were on the planes?
Huh?
The guns that were on the plane?
Yeah, bombers.
Yeah.
Yeah, all 50 calibers. You had to learn to disassemble a 50 caliber machine gun blindfolded, clean the parts, and put it back together. And then you also had to fire from those 2 planes at targets out in the Gulf, anchored in the Gulf. We had this, I never did fly the 16, I flew the AT-6, real gun on there.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't use a 50 caliber on that, but it had a 30 caliber mounted on a track on the back of the cockpit, and you fired out from there.
Why did they send you to engine school and then the gunnery school?
Well, you had either go when you was a gunnery person. You either had to have radio or engine mechanics.
Oh, okay.
You was either the
Second rating.
Yeah.
you had a second thing, yeah.
Okay.
Just like when I went back to school after war into Europe, I went on to B-29s, and I had to learn to be another. I was a ETS electrical troubleshooter on the B-29 plus gunnery. I had to go back through gunnery school after teaching it for nearly 3 years when I went back to the B-29.
Well, how'd you go from taking gunnery school to being a teacher in gunnery school?
When I finished at Fort Myers, as I say, they just started that school. And when we graduated, they said everybody with an IQ of above 136 had to stay on as instructors. And I was in that category.
Yeah, smart you.
And there was three of us buddied together, me and Harry Dwight and Sam Llewellyn. And Sam, all three of us were supposed to stay as instructors. And Sam, he didn't want to. He went to CO and told him, he says, I'm not going to be an instructor. He says, I'm going on now. He looked at him and says, son, says, you know, you're going to do what I tell you to do. He says, you got no choice in it. So we had to stay.
So how did you like doing that?
That was nice. I was in the dismantling the 50 caliber, teaching them that there for about maybe 3 months. And they opened the gunnery school up in Fort Myers. So they sent 21 of us up one night, three B-17s, had 7, I was in each one up there. And we didn't take off from Fort Myers till after dark. We went out across the Gulf. And the plane I was in was the only one that landed at Panama City. One of them landed in Texas and one in Mississippi.
But they didn't bring navigators with them.
But the one I was in, we was out over the Gulf lost, and raining up a storm. The awful storm you ever see. That's how come all of them got lost, that big storm. And I was standing back in the back looking out the window and had on the headphones and talking to the pilot about it. And he kept saying, we can't do it, we'll never make it. And he told me, he says, what about getting them all ready to jump? I said, when? He said, in just a little bit. I said, well, I can see the waves down there right on top of the water. And he said, well, let me get some altitude. And he started climbing, and one of the guys up front says, I see a light up yonder. And it was at Panama City. Is mill there, pulp mill, paper mill. And they had a big tank with a light on it. That's what he's seen.
So did you land at an actual airport, or?
We landed at Panama City
Okay.
Airfield.
Yeah.
but our plane was the only one that made it in that night.